Hey everyone, we're off cooldown once again. Today it's just me, Dell, and Kal, as Newt is busy at the moment, and we'll be talking about a game we both played extensively and love very much. I'm referring, of course, to the critically acclaimed MMORPG that is a free trial and includes the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward expansion up to level 60 with no restrictions on playtime, FF14. Now, we've talked a lot about this game in passing and sometimes not so much in passing, so we've decided to give you a full episode on why we recommend that you give this game a try. To start things off, Cal can give you a little history on FF14, like where it started, how it's going, because this game has had a pretty storied and rocky, that's an understatement, past before it evolved into the MMO giant that it is today. So, Cal?
Yeah, so FF14 is the Final Fantasy franchise's second MMO after FF11. Uh, Originally, the same team that made FF11 was assigned to kind of bring FF14 to reality. So at first, they thought that the project was too big to fail. FF is too strong of a brand, and whatever we come up with, people will love. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. I mean, the FF brand and the MMO scape has changed so much over the course of between FF11 and 14. So by the time that FF14 came out, WoW was already a big force in the MMO space, right? So everyone was playing World of Warcraft. I mean, it was the biggest MMO at the time, and they kind of set a precedence to what people expect from an MMO. So FF14 came out kind of as a disaster. So it was panned by critics, by players. It was technically buggy. There were so many hoops you had to play through just to have a smooth experience. And it was so eventually they decided to just remake the whole project. They changed management. Some people in the team got changed up. They brought on Yoshi P, who was actually from the Enix branch of Square Enix. So he previously worked on Dragon Quest before coming into FF14. And then he is a self-proclaimed MMO player himself. So he played all EverQuest, the old MMOs, and also WoW. So I feel like they thought he was the best man in the team for the job to direct the new direction of FF14. So when he got brought on, that made he made a lot of sweeping changes to the game, and then brought it closer to what we expect from a modern MMO now. So since then, FF14 has grown exceptionally large. It has 3 expansions now, with a 4th one coming this month actually, and then it now has 24 million players, which is insane. That's really huge now, especially since MMOs aren't as big as they used to be. And then it is also the most profitable Final Fantasy game. So that's pretty good for something that started as a disaster that almost ended the franchise.
Yeah, absolute props and praise be to the team that reworked so much of the game from the ground up. It wasn't it like Yoshi P was behind the whole thing. He was directing the direction of where they'd be going with it. But the whole team was able to bring this project back from the brink. And also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they brought Square Enix back from the brink of bankruptcy, right, at the time?
Yeah, it was pretty shaky at the time.
Yeah, if you're more interested in figuring out more and finding out more about the history of FF14, the YouTube channel NoClip actually made a 3-part documentary about it, which runs about almost 2 hours, I think. And I think it's worth a watch if you're interested to see all the little bits and pieces of what happened when FF14 started out, and then how it was reborn, and how things went from there.
Yeah, it was really I feel like it's a minor miracle, really, that the game actually turned out this way. So let's talk about what new players can expect when they get into the game. First off, I wanna open this part by saying that the start of FF14 is quite a slog. I mean, let's be honest. I've talked to a lot of friends, tried to get them into this game, and I feel like my general litmus test is if they finish A Realm Reborn, level 1 to 50, they usually stay. But if they fall out before then, you usually don't see them again in game.
Yeah, and I mean, they did change a lot about the first 50 levels. They streamlined it. They took out a bunch of boring and menial quests that really slogged down the experience when Kal and I played it, and a bunch of the earlier players played it. But even then, the first 50 levels, they really pale so much in comparison to what the game has to offer past that level, which, yeah, I feel like, I guess it's kind of a shame in that sense, but at the same time, it is really old at this point. Like, the base game is really old at this point. And I guess that's just something you kind of have to look past. Just think about all the cool things you can do after level 50 when you're trying to get through the sloggy part of it.
Yeah, I feel like them putting Heaven's Word into the free trial is like a master stroke of genius, because like people actually get to taste what after AR feels like. I mean, I'm not like trying to say that ARR like you should skip it, because I personally would not ask anyone to skip ARR because it builds up a lot of like the foundations, especially story wise, that pay off later on in other expansions. But it is quite a long, lengthy experience that you have to, power through.
And I do have to say that if playing through ARR, it's a lot more fun if you play with friends, like people who are generally around the same level as you. Maybe you guys start at the same time and do things together. There's a lot of different classes to try out anyway, and there's a lot of content to run together. It feels like a lot more of a slog when you're doing it solo. So, and considering like the first 60 levels of the game, that includes Heaven's Word, are free. If you have some friends, you guys can go ahead and try it out together. It makes the whole AR experience a lot better. And I do agree with like what Kal said. Story wise, AR really sets the foundation for the characters that you would grow to love in the later expansions, and the story that becomes far more interesting, far more gripping in the later expansions. So, Kal, you brought most of our friend group who actually play FF into FF. Like, how did you start out?
Okay.
Like, what got you into FF14?
I've loved FF for like a long time. So when I heard about a new MMO coming, I was like super hyped. But then back then I was like in high school or something. I didn't have money to pay the monthly fee. Sometime in college, one of my upperclassmen friends like was playing FF14 and told me about it, and was like, oh, it looks so awesome. But back then that free trial was like only 14 days, so I tried it out for 14 days and like vowed to myself that, oh shit, I'm gonna play this when I have like the funds. So it took me like 2 more years. My free trial that was 14 days was way back in Heaven's Word. So that's like it's like a few years ago now. So it took me 2 years after that before I actually got the full game, and then I started with my brother. So we played together until what expand. I think I finished Heaven's Word, and then I took a short break. And then by the time I got to Stormblood, I already yoinked a few friends to come with me.
So like I mentioned earlier, like I got into F14 because I was one of the friends that Kal invited. So I played the 14-day trial, and I knew that I had a sibling who also played, although on a different data center, so I couldn't really play with them. But I did have a character there. But then, I played through the free trial, and I kind of liked it, so I bought the game, and I figured that, if I was going to buy the game anyway, might as well buy. So I bought everything all the way up to Stormblood, which was the latest expansion at the time, and then I kind of just got hooked. I think it was February. I don't remember what year that was. 2018 maybe, when I started playing, and then when things really picked up, I just didn't stop playing. Like I really enjoyed the content that FF14 had at the time. I really enjoyed the community, especially. I feel like that was such a big part. Was the guild that Kal had found, are some of our friends in that guild. I made some really good friends with people online. That something I hadn't done before. Like be able to make what I felt were like genuine connections with people online, and I feel like FF's community was really friendly, and that really helped me settle into the game even more.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like FF's community is like one of the best online communities I've ever been a part of. Like, not only did we get, I feel like part of it is we got really lucky with the guild that we had, but I feel like in general it's like super welcoming. Like sometimes you make a mistake in like party finder with a bunch of strangers, but everyone's like okay, pretty chill. I've rarely seen any toxicity, and I've been playing this for like 3 years. I actually have more hours in FF than in Dota, and I've been playing Dota for longer. So it's kind of wow.
Genuinely chill community. Probably the least hostile and toxic online community from a game that I've played, especially considering a game of this size, like with the sheer number of players. Like, of course, experiences may vary depending on which region you are in. I hear that the region that we're in, the around the JP area, especially the English speaking JP region, they tend to be a bit friendlier. I've heard a few horror stories in NA, but even then, those are like isolated cases. And overall, in general, the community is, yeah, it's really friendly, and it really helps you settle into the game. As for
Yeah.
what the game's actually like, there's all sorts of content for all sorts of different kinds of players. Like, you kind of just pick what you want as you go along and decide how you're gonna play.
Yeah. First off, I feel like as a new player, of course there are dungeons. That's like the most basic MMO content we have. So dungeons in FF are 4-man affairs, 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPSs. And then basically you just run through the dungeon by killing mobs and fighting a few bosses along the way. So that's like the basic content. Everyone goes through that, and it's really not that hard. You just queue on it. It's part of your dailies, and you get a lot of XP for doing it. Some of them are tied to the story as well. Oh, yeah, I think that's one thing we have to mention. Everything in FF14 is unlocked by doing the MSQ, or the main scenario quest. So, unlocking new dungeons, new features, you just have to do the quest for it, and then that's how you unlock it.
Yeah. And also, as you run through all the basic dungeons, if maybe like you're a seasoned MMO player and you're like coming in here wanting to do raids and whatnot, the dungeons lay the foundation for the kind of mechanics that you're going to be encountering later on in raids. So I feel like even if you're not particularly interested, or maybe you might find some of the dungeons a little less engaging because of how much of a seasoned MMO player you are, a lot of the mechanics, you're going to see them again later on in far more complex variations. But just playing through it is worth it. But if you're not really up to that, they also have story skip. That's an available purchase. You can just purchase it and then immediately jump up to, I think as of right now, level 70. Maybe when the next expansion comes out, you skip immediately to level 80. But I personally wouldn't recommend that if you're playing through the first time, because the story is good, and also, like I said earlier, what you learn mechanically when you play through the story dungeons, they lay the foundation for what you're going to be doing in more complex content later on in the game.
Yeah. Speaking of mechanics, I also really appreciate that FF14 runs like completely without any add-ons. Like as a new player, you just install the game, start playing. All the I feel like some other MMOs really require you to install a bunch of stuff to know like the boss markers, like the telegraphs and stuff. In FF14, it's all baked into the game itself, so you'll just have to, pay attention and find out the mechanics as you go along.
Yeah, it's very much a plug and play experience. I mean, there's a couple of add-ons that some people do use, but sometimes, like most of the time, it's like aesthetic changes. Like they want to change a couple of things about the UI. They want to have like shaders on and whatnot. So yeah, like Kal mentioned, it's all baked into the game. It's not really anything you have to think about on that technical note. Maybe you're not too skilled on that, or if you're not really interested in putting the time aside, you just want to play the game.
Yeah. So, as for other battle content, there's also alliance raids, which are 24-man. So that's 3 teams of 8 going through. It's kind of like a big dungeon with harder bosses that have like bigger HP pools, and usually these are like tied to a side quest of their own. We've had the collaboration with Final Fantasy Tactics and Nier so far, and then the other alliance raids are like FF14 based. What else? There's also trials, which are like 8-man short fights range between like 8 to 12 minutes. So those are 2 healers, 2 tanks, 4 DPS. They're kind of like a sampler for the harder content in the game, which are the raids, which are 8-man, which are normal or savage difficulty. Savage is like the entry point into the like more hardcore content of the game, and then you have ultimates, which are the hardest content in the game. Currently there's like 3 ultimate fights. So yeah, so there's generally, if you're like a more hardcore player, you aim for eventually reaching triple legend, so clearing all 3 ultimates, which is quite an achievement.
Yeah, like complexity wise, it goes in that order where like trials, there are many parts in the story you actually end up in a trial. Like they're not optional content tied directly to the story that you're going to be playing. It's just like this massive boss fight, like what Kal mentioned, 8 people, and then you go up to raiding. I think like raiding is like the very baseline for people who want to enjoy the more crunchier, more mechanical side of FF14. Then you get the savage. It really depends though, because like some savage raids are significantly easier than others.
That's
Some
true.
of them are like far more complex.
That's true. But generally, the Savage tier for the expansion you're on is like the baseline and of the like end game content. Like this is where you get BIS or your best in slot gear for the expansion.
We could talk a little bit more about the actual gameplay. Like, so there are how many now? 17
Yeah.
distinct classes to play from.
Yep, with
Uh,
2 more on the way.
So there'll be like a grand total of 19. Currently, there are three. Can I count four? Four tanks.
Yes, four
tanks. 3 healers with the 4th one on the way.
Yep.
And then the rest of them are DPS split into different roles. So you have the melee DPS.
Yep. There are gonna be 5 of
consisting
them.
of the monk, the ninja, the samurai, the dragoon, and the upcoming class, the reaper. And then there are 3 casters: the
Yep.
black mage, the red mage, and the summoner. And there's also the blue mage, but that's a different kind of content altogether. It's the blue mage is sort of like this weird caster where you go around the overworld or into some instanced dungeons and raids, and when you get hit by a certain specific attacks, you actually gain access to those attacks. Or if you witness those attacks, you actually gain access to those attacks. So it's like this kind of weird. I don't know. It's like that weird cousin of the caster classes that are a completely different form of content altogether.
Yeah, it's a bit like spell collect, like Pokemon collection, except it's spells. It's kind of fun, but it's not really. You don't really use it in like general content.
I hear it's a lot of fun, like when people do like all blue mage runs of certain content. It's really interesting to watch. Although I haven't leveled a blue mage myself. And then, sorry, where were we? There's the range DPS, which consists of the machinist, the archer, the bard, and the dancer. Yeah, and actually, we didn't mention the tanks. So the tanks and the healers, there are 4 tanks: the paladin, the dark knight, the warrior, and the gunbreaker. And then the healers have the white mage, the scholar, and the upcoming sage, as well as the astrologian.
Yep.
So there's a lot to choose from, and all of them have really distinct playstyles and rotations. FF14 uses the classic global cooldown based gameplay where you press one button and then certain skills will start to cool down, and you press another button and then you combo off with those, and there's some off global cooldown things that you press between those GCDs. So it's very classic MMO gameplay. Although I haven't played it myself, I haven't played WoW myself, but I hear that FF14's baseline GCD time is much slower than WoW's. Like, because FF14's base time is like 2.5 seconds per GCD, and I think WoW is somewhere around the like 1.5 to 2 second mark, even faster on some classes.
Yeah, I hear a lot about the GCD, especially since like more and more people from WoW are coming in. But I feel like, in general, at like once you reach level cap and unlocked all your OGCDs or off global cooldown skills, it's actually pretty close together. Like how many buttons you have to press in between a window. It is kind of a slog at lower levels though.
Yeah, like you're pressing the same 1, 2, 3 buttons up until you hit like level 50, level 30 maybe, when you get your job stone to change from your lower tier class to the advanced class. Yeah. Overall, that's the general gameplay of F14. There, you basically press your GCDs to do your rotations, deal damage, and then you follow the mechanics. There's a lot of different ones which you can't really talk about because of the sheer number of different mechanics there are. But you get it. It's MMO style rating. A bit different from WoW in the sense that I hear like WoW players tend to be about organizing this large party to do a bunch of different functions, whereas FF14 is like make a 10 to 13 minute fight that is very heavily practiced. Like it's 8 people practicing this specific fight, remembering mechanics, and then figuring out the different variations for different mechanics. It's a lot more condensed and a lot more mechanically complex in that sense, where it's a little less about commanding a bunch of different people to do a bunch of different roles and reacting on the fly to different mechanics. FF14 tends to just be a lot more about memorization when it comes to raiding.
Yeah, it's definitely like practicing a dance, I guess. You just have to be at the right spot and hit your damage spells like correctly in the right combo. Also, I feel like it's a lot more responsibility per player since there's only 8 of you, and if one of you messes up, you kinda kill everyone else. So there's a lot less room for error. It's
this intricate choreographed synchronized dance.
Yeah.
In a way. But battle isn't the only systems that FF14 has to offer. If you're a more casual player, or perhaps you just don't prefer that kind of content, they do have crafting and gathering. And so there's I don't know how many crafting classes because I don't craft. But there are 3 gatherers. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
the crafting and gathering is a whole game on its own where you go around the overworld and you go around some instanced versions of the overworld, such as or like Diadem, for example.
yeah,
And you collect materials, which you can then craft into different items that you can actually wear or items that you can use in your in-game house. And they even have this. If you're a competitive crafter, they recently, well, I'd say recently, but within the last expansion, they added this what's it called, Ishgard restoration mechanic,
yeah,
where there are leaderboards for crafting and gathering, and the competition gets pretty fierce from what I've seen.
yeah. I have a few friends that actually like fought for their place in the leaderboard, and during that week where they were competing for the Ishgard ranking, it was like you saw them online the whole week without
Just
I don't know.
online,
Yeah,
pressing their crafting macros, going around gathering.
yeah, it's insane. People, there's also like a bunch of hardcore fishers, which is like even more insane because I feel like some fish like only show up at certain times of in real life time periods. So you actually have to wake up at like 3 a.m. if that's the window that the fish is coming in. So it's quite a lot of work if you want to be a hardcore crafter gatherer. There are also
Big
like legit rotations for them too.
big collectathon and lots of time investment for that one, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I guess it isn't as casual as we thought.
I mean, it has the casual side, but
Yeah.
I do think that hardcore crafter gatherers are even more hardcore than hardcore raiders.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of time commitment.
There's certainly a lot of different scales to each thing. Like even housing, it seems
Mm.
pretty casual, but the race to get an actual house against like the 24 other million players trying to get a house is kind of very struggly.
Yeah, FF14, truly a Final Fantasy game because, like, actually owning property in a house is a fantasy for a lot of us.
Yeah, man. Actually owning a house, making a difference in the world, God.
Yeah, housing is another thing entirely. Like, if you're into like designing a house, like Cal's really into that, and
Yeah.
I guess the system is a bit clunky though. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely
Like
not the Sims.
like there's a lot of ways to do simple layouts, but for more complex stuff, you have to do a lot of floating and glitching. So I would consider that to be like that's like the housing savage, like the savage tier equivalent of housing. It's just trying to get more complex builds out with a limited number of furnishing slots and the amount of glitching you have to do to actually get things to stick where you want them to.
Yeah, you're also limited by like the layout since all the houses have the same layout, right? So you have to be pretty creative to create a custom one that
Or
doesn't look like someone else's.
or like if you have the in-game currency for it, you can hire somebody like Cal to furnish your house for you.
Yeah. There's that as well. What
But
other?
there's like, if you're into more traditional like old style MMOs, what would you consider like an old style MMO? Maybe like Ragnarok Online, maybe like RuneScape. Some of the end game content that they have to offer, starting the Stormblood expansion, is Eureka and the Bozion Front, which are a bit more like classic MMOs, wherein that you're beating up a bunch of mobs in the overworld, and you guys go into these fates, which are not exactly instance duties together, like with a mass number of players, and also because there's no convenient way to form parties there. Like you actually have to go around and talk to people, maybe use the global shout chat to ask for a party, to organize actual runs for these things. And as far as I know from our common friend, Kal and I's common friend, who is a pretty seasoned MMO player, like it kind of reminds them of like the old style MMO where you build your community around doing things together, and it's not necessarily that the means of communication and the means of forming parties and matchmaking, for example, because like all of the other instance dungeons and raids have a form of matchmaking that that the FF system will handle for you. But in these versions, you actually have to organize things, and you end up meeting new people. Very similar to the more old school style of MMO, I guess.
Yeah, I mean they're like dedicated discords to like find a party for Boja or Eureka. It's kind of insane. I tried Eureka for a bit back in Stormblood, but I didn't really get into it because when you died, you lost levels. experience, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad it doesn't we like left this in the early 2000s where it don't. It's such a struggle, and like the overall mobs are actually like they actually hurt. So like, oh, this is some old school MMO nostalgia where like you're just walking around as a Lofi and suddenly you're dead. So yeah, it
You even
really
have
reminded me of those old times.
would you consider like because they also have like more sort of dungeon crawler esque game modes like Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, where it's just like 200 floors of deep dungeon style. You fight a few mobs here, and they're all quite difficult. There's a lot of RNG involved with some of the items that you find. You have a separate level inside of the instance compared to outside of it. So, now before the onset of like Eureka and the Boseon Front from the the second and the third expansions. The first expansion, as well as the base game, has sort of these deep dungeons as your form of I think would be a form of endgame grind that's similar to that.
Mm.
So it's just like classic like dungeon crawler, 10 floors and then a boss, and then 10 floors and then a boss. But then it's 200 floors deep.
Yeah.
It's, like, there's a lot to get from it. Mostly like cosmetics and minions and titles and that sort of thing. So if you're that sort of achievement hunter, that's also there for you. Although I do consider that I do think that the deeper levels are quite a bit of a time commitment.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen runs of like HOH, and it's like a solo player doing all of it like alone. It's like insane. You have to have like really good luck because like there are random things that like change the environment or give you certain skills. So it's quite an achievement to like finish all 200 floors alone. I guess it's easier with a group, but like it's still I feel like it might be harder than Ultimate actually.
Well, because a lot of it comes down to luck and chance with that
Yeah.
one, I also think. So that kind of does make it more difficult.
Yeah.
So as you can see, as we've been talking about there's a lot of content that FF14 has to offer, but you don't actually have to do all of it if you want to be a casual player. Like the commitment requirements for FF14, we can talk a little bit about that. Like how much time have you poured into it? But then also, how much time do you think you've had to pour into it? Like in terms of just like, have you ever experienced like moments where you just I just want to get past this so I can already start doing something else?
I feel like I have poured more hours into this game than Dota, so that's a few thousand like a few thousand hours by now. I feel like most of it was like just me wanting to like stay in the game because it's like quite fun to talk with friends, especially now like in the last 2 years that we've had a pandemic. It's like the only social outlet we have that's even like the closest thing we can get to going outside. So I feel like I racked up a whole bunch of hours during the pandemic. I also started raiding, so that's also a big time sink. But like forced hours, or I feel like only about 30 to maybe even less than that is like me having to slog through something. But most of those are also because like I want the prize at the end. Like Praetorium runs give lots of tomes or experience, stuff like that.
45-minute cutscene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with me. Like I've poured like I think the last time I checked, because I haven't been playing since the latter half of 2020. So it's been almost a year, I think, since I've actually resubscribed. Maybe a Q1 2022 would have already been a year since my last subscription to FF14. But I sunk in, I think, more than 1,500 hours in the short time that I was playing between. I think it started in 2018 to 2020. It sunk in like 1,500, maybe almost 2,000 hours. I don't remember the last time I checked. That is a lot of time in 2 years. A lot of it might have been just AFK at the house, but even then, when I was AFK at the house, like I was just waiting for somebody to show up, and I would start talking to them. So there's that community aspect. And as for forced hours, yeah, the same thing with Kal. It felt like there wasn't that much of it. Like I did not particularly enjoy some parts of ARR because, well, it's for one, it's a very dated game, and it's kind of slow. And I enjoy pressing a lot of buttons very quickly when I'm playing MMO, when I'm playing FF14, and the lower levels didn't feel that way. I also am not particularly a fan of crafting, but that's just me. And I didn't have to do that content. Like I don't have to. So that wasn't part of the forced hours. I do have to say that every time I level up a new class, it's not particularly enjoyable again for like the first maybe 30 levels until you get your first job stone, or maybe first 15 levels before I can start running one of the deep dungeons to get to grind XP. But overall, yeah, if you're not like me and you don't feel like leveling a whole bunch of classes because you kind of get tired of one quickly, or there isn't really that much for a casual player, especially if you're focusing on one class, or just a few classes. Like there isn't really that much commitment that you have to give in. Like the dailies that we have in FF14, they reward you with experience points and tomes, but the tomes don't really matter because you use them to buy good gear. But then you don't really need the good gear unless you're doing certain kinds of content. So, and at the end of the expansion, they kind of uncap that. So the amount of tomes you can earn per week is a lot higher. So you can kind of just grind out the content. Then if you're more free or you feel like you want to try out something new, there's a lot of outlets to catch up. So I do think that there isn't really that much commitment in terms of like what you have to go. It's not like a gacha game. Oh, I have to do this every day. I'm gonna be missing out on so much of this and that, right? It's like you kind of just you can kind of move at your own pace and invest however much time you want to at a time.
Yeah, actually, the gacha parallel is quite very appropriate since I like only started playing a gacha game this year. And it's like the dailies there really make you hurt, man. Like if I feel like if I miss a daily, I'm like, oh, this is real money translating into something I'm not getting. And then for FF14, even if it's like a subscription game that I pay every month for, it's like I feel like if I miss a day, it's like fine, I'll just do it on the weekend or whatever. As long as like I think the only thing that like I feel a commitment to doing every day would be like if I was signed up for a raid group. So of course I have to be on time and show up every time that we have a session. But otherwise it's like I can just log in whenever I want. It doesn't hurt if I like miss a day. I do like being updated with the story though. So I do try like as long as there's a new MSQ that's updating, I just finish the story and then take it easy after that.
Yeah, like with the gacha game comparison, like I've been playing the same gacha game, Arknights, I think, every day since February 2020. Like I have not missed a single login day since Feb 2020, and I think what makes a difference because sort of like when you miss out a login day in like your gacha games, you have like this currency, this stamina or whatever it is, the resin in Genshin, where like it caps out a certain point in the day, and you can bank it now with the use of the condensed resin, but you can only bank it so much, and then like there's a bunch of other dailies you have to like your commissions. Whereas in FF, for example, you miss a day, you can decide, oh, I want to gain this much XP per day. Like I want to hit this level today. And then you think that, oh, I don't have the time for it. You can put it off to another day, and you're not really missing out on anything besides like the small amount of daily bonus that you get from your EXP. But then you can still just keep grinding the dungeon over and over to get XP. So it's like fine to miss out. Like,
It is
there's no rewards that you get for logging in. Yeah, I think it's really the stamina system that separates it and why it feels far more okay to pay a monthly subscription for a game like FF14 because I don't feel like I'm required to log in every day if I don't feel like it.
Yeah. It's actually as an aside, Yoshipi actually says upfront that if you're feeling burnt out or want to try a new game, you can definitely unsubscribe and just come back later. Like he literally says that in some interviews. So it's quite refreshing to hear from a live service game because most live service games like shackle you into them, man. Your randomized loot drops, like you need
Battle pass.
Yeah, you need to run every day for certain points. I'm also really glad that loot in FF14 is not randomized. Like I know some people are really into the grind, but like I'm glad that after 8 runs of this fight, everyone got their BAS already. So thank God. It's like you can really easily schedule your life around raiding, like because you don't need to randomly run it again for a better, like slightly better stat percentage or whatever, because everything's fixed. I mean, I guess it kind of narrows down like the kinds of builds you can do on each class, but since there's every class is available for the same character, you don't really you have like 19 different builds technically. So if you think about it that way, it's still a bunch of different diversity choices you have.
Yeah, definitely. And compared to other MMOs though, like since neither of us are very seasoned with them, like how do I don't really know how to make the comparison, but I do know that a lot of players have made the switch over to FF14 in recent history.
That's true. I feel like with the surge of like new eyes on the game, I mean, a bunch of big creators suddenly moved from like their old games to FF14, right? So I feel like that's part of the wave, but it's been steadily growing for a while, especially since like I feel like Shadowbringers was a really big draw in for a lot of people because it like reviewed so well. It was like nominated for a bunch of awards and everyone couldn't stop talking about it, including me. So after finishing the Shadowbringers expansion, I was like super rejuvenated to get more friends into this game.
Yeah. Yeah. Shadowbringers. I would say that Shadowbringers, no spoilers, but I'd say that Shadowbringers is like one of the best RPG stories I have played in a long time, and probably has one of my favorite villains, I think, maybe of all time. Like, just so well written. You know, the expansion as a whole is so well written, and so was that particular villain, which I'm not going to name because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, Shadowbringers is definitely a huge pinnacle for this game. I feel like it was like the perfect payoff to like 8 years of Final Fantasy XIV. Like everyone, I feel so happy for everyone who like stayed since 1.0. They must be like super proud of this game by Shadowbringers. Like the payoff is insane. It's like if Game of Thrones didn't suck at the
end. Hey, so you being a longtime Final Fantasy fan, Kal, is this a Final Fantasy game? Because I've not played any other Final Fantasies besides Dissidia and Tactics on the Game Boy. So, like, I don't have a comparison point. How is this compared to other Final Fantasy games? Does it carry the Final Fantasy brand outside of the aesthetics and the jobs that show up in it?
For me, it's personally the most Final Fantasy game. Like in essence, because for me, Final Fantasy game is all about bring a bunch of people together to like save the world or something. And this one allows you to do that with actual friends instead of like a set bunch of characters where basically it turns a Final Fantasy game into you as the main character. Like you're in every cutscene, you're like the Warrior of Light. So you're pretty important in the story. You're not like just at the edge there watching the other characters do their thing. And story-wise, it really like especially ARR feels the most like a really like one of the classic Final Fantasies. So it's like 3 city states with like different problems all together, and they have to work, like they have to settle their differences and work towards fighting the evil empire, blah blah blah. And then by the time you get to Heavensward and Stormblood, Shadowbringers, it gets more and more complex from there. And the characters and what happens to them are very endearing. I feel like Final Fantasy always focuses a lot on like its characters and what happens to them, aside from of course being a solid RPG. But yeah, beyond the like of course there's like surface level, like there's chocobos and muggles, certain bosses from old games or bosses in FF. So like that's the baseline, but like at its core, I feel like it's very big to how to explain, but like the soul of FF14 is definitely Final Fantasy. It's more of a Final Fantasy than MMO, to be honest, because we like don't have guild-wide PvP or world PK, stuff like that. Like other MMOs have that, right? But FF14 doesn't have that, so it's a lot more, how to say, cozy. It's like more friendly in general. We don't have like factions and stuff.
Well, I mean, I guess we do have factions, but they don't really have bearing. Like, you can align yourself with one of the 3 city states, but then I guess they only really have bearing in the PvP game modes.
Yeah, but even then, like, now they've already applied PvP mercenary system. So you're randomly, when you, like, Frontlines is the 3v3v3 PvP mode where you're set into one of the 3 factions, and then you fight each other to control certain points on the map. So since Shadowbringers, they've already removed being tied to your faction, so it's already randomized every time you queue, which kind of made me sad, by the way, because I used to be like, my win rate on I used to be Maelstrom only, and my win rate as Maelstrom in Frontline is like insanely high. I don't know why. I think a lot of Frontline focused people in our data centers like on the Maelstrom, luckily. So they like been carrying my wins, but recently, now that it's random, it's like more of a even distribution between the 3 factions. So yeah,
actually, I think we have to talk about that for a bit. Like, I hear that among people who came from other MMOs, right, FF14 has a particularly weak PvP system.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean,
I only played a little PvP back when I used to play Dragon Nest, but even what little I have played, FF14's PvP feels like it pales in comparison as of, with where it stands right now. But I think they're addressing them. They're making some changes in the upcoming expansion.
Yeah, they're adding a new game mode that suspiciously sounds a little like Battle Royale. I'm not sure. But the what how to say, like the initial buzzwords they've been using is like it's inspired by like Fortnite and stuff like that. So I'm guessing it might be a Battle Royale mode, which would be interesting. But I feel like the biggest gripe when it comes to PvP is like the PvP moveset isn't as fun as your standard moveset because it's like very pared down. There's so many skills that are simplified or just not there from your usual battle class, and they haven't found a way to like completely balance that yet. So I hope they do address it in like future updates. But yeah.
Speaking of future update, we have Endwalker, the fourth, right?
Yeah, fourth expansion.
The fourth expansion pack coming later this month. When is it? The 23rd if you don't have the early access.
Yep. But if you're already playing, you would probably already have
Pre-ordered.
Yeah, pre-ordered. So it's November 19 for people who have the early access. So yeah, let's run down the new stuff that's coming to Endwalker like super fast. I mean, since this is for new players, it probably won't make a lot of sense, but generally what's coming with Endwalker is new MSU, so that's new story.
And the story is going to be written by Shadowbringers lead writer Natsuko Ichikawa, who has made some of the best stories for me in FF. Like, she wrote the best job quest. She wrote the best sub quest line in the Stormblood expansion. She wrote Shadowbringers, which is, like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite RPG stories of recent history. And I'm pretty interested to see what direction she's going to take this new expansion, especially considering, and no spoilers, the main villain of this expansion is a villain who I personally dislike. Not because he's a good villain, like he's a returning villain. I don't like this villain, not because they're a good villain, but because they're poorly written. So I dislike them.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the story because this is also supposed to be like the closing of the Heidelin versus Zodiac arc. So Heidelin and Zodiac have been like built up since ARR, right? So if this is the end of that, and after this expansion it's gonna be totally new. It's like a whole new frontier. I don't know what to expect anymore after that. So
I wonder if you think that FF14 has a lot more years under its belt, because the engine kind of feels dated in some places, especially when you're going through the pre-expansion release benchmarks, and you can kind of see that like the textures are aging on this thing.
Yeah.
the engine the game runs on, it's due for a change, and if they want to keep the game like completely alive, like without moving on to the next FF MMO, which they won't because FF16 is still in development, right?
Yeah. I feel like it still has quite a few years. I mean, part of me hopes that they just like overhaul the engine or something. I mean, I feel like Yoshi P is like insane enough to to do something of that big of an undertaking, but I do feel it's more likely they'll just like move on to the next FF MMO, which will be kind of sad. No, we've been playing this game for years.
I'm not too sure about maybe not anytime soon, that's for sure, because the expansion just came out, so that we're guaranteed at least 2 more years of content from just that.
Yeah.
And they had already mentioned that they have some plans for the direction of 6.0, which implies the existence of another expansion after Endwalker.
Yeah.
So
I do hope we get some
Endwalker is
engine
6.0,
updates.
never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do hope we get some engine updates though, because
well, I mean, with the sheer number of players that we have right now, how big FF14 is, maybe they might be incentivized if ever Square Enix, if you ever hear this, just rehaul your FF14 engine.
Please give FF14 more a piece of the pie of the money they're making. Sorry, Square.
Top earner, but then it just goes into developing their other games. Come on, Square, give us our money.
Yeah, man. Please. Alright, so aside from the super exciting MSQ, I mean, really the story is one of the biggest draw-ins of this game. There's also 2 new classes which we mentioned before. So the Reaper, which uses a scythe, and the Sage, which uses Noliths, which are basically like flying blade thingies.
If you're a fan of Gundam, they're funnels. That's what they are.
Yeah,
they shoot lasers.
They look insanely cool. I can't wait to try Sage out. I might actually switch from Scholar to Sage because of how awesome it looks.
I'll probably be playing Reaper just because of how complex the rotation looks like it might be.
The effects on that thing are also insane. They have like so many particles.
Yeah, it's all glowy and green or purple or red, and they also have a portal. They have a portal that lets them their gap closer. It's just one of their attacks leaves the portal, and the other one teleports back to that portal. It's
Yeah.
called a Hellgate, and it's cool. It's edgy.
Oh yeah, speaking of the classes, they've also overhauled like all the existing classes for like not the total overhaul, but of course there's some new things coming to each class for Endwalker. I personally play Bard, so I'm really excited for getting like more utility in the songs. So we're finally more of a support class again. Yay.
But actually, if you look at the changes that a lot of the classes have, right, they're giving us a lot of mitigation, a lot of movement tech, and a lot of utility, which makes me think that next raid tier mechanics are hopefully gonna be more complex, like more exciting, because like they can probably put a lot more in because just of the sheer amount of like mitigation that we seem to have now, sheer amount of mobility that's like healers have a gap closer now, right?
Yeah.
Like Summoner got a gap closer. uh Ninja has 4 gap closers now, 5 if you count the extra stack of Shikuchi, which makes me think that are they gonna make us move
Move
around a lot
around.
more than we used to? Like
Yeah.
Scholar has a party-wide movement speed buff that works in combat. It's like, yeah, are we gonna be moving a lot more than we're used to from the previous expansions? I'm
Black
kind
Mage is
of
even
interested to
harder.
see. Yeah, but they gave it a lot more quick casting, like a lot more instant casting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what direction they're going with the raid here because of the implications of these changes to the classes that they've made. Like all of the tanks have a lot more mitigation now, which means that they're gonna get hit a lot harder. Like I don't know if that only applies for like uh end game content, like savage tier content, or if it's gonna apply to everything else as well.
That might be exciting. I feel like the general consensus is the healers actually don't have that much to heal right now. Like most healers can still like greed comfortably and use DPS skills instead of healing.
And that was the same mindset that they had right in Shadowbringers. Coming into Shadowbringers, they said they wanted to put the healers into more of a healing role, but I guess it still wasn't enough by their standards.
Yeah, I mean, good healers are insanely good though. So I guess
Good,
they.
yeah, good healers heal as little as possible.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite exciting to see what the new changes to the battle system are gonna be. So of course, that also means we're getting new instance content. So new trials, new raids, new dungeons, alliance
Hopefully a
raids.
new ultimate, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think they confirmed 2 new ultimates this expansion because
Oh,
Shadowbringers was supposed to get 2.
then with
So
all
yeah, but one got
COVID and all.
delayed. So one of them got delayed to uh Endwalker, the Dragon Song War one. So I feel like Heavensward fans are gonna really like that one.
So unless on the battle side of things, of course, we're getting new things for crafters and gatherers as well because they're also going to get their max level cap raised to 90, and they're also introducing the Island Sanctuary, which is pretty. It's like an instanced version of your own little island. So everybody is now guaranteed their own house. You don't have to fight for the scraps of open lots at the beginning of the expansion. What does it look like to you? Because to me, it kind of seems like, oh, they're giving FF14 the Stardew Valley Harvest Moon ACNH treatment. Like, basically got Animal Crossing in FF14.
I really hope that it's that. I mean, we haven't had so many details aside from getting like a soft confirm that we might have a house in there. We don't know how the farming is gonna work. But I feel like it might be really great for people that are into playing the market board. Like imagine not having to walk out and collect anything and just farm everything yourself. That would be so efficient.
That's like a completely different way to play FF14. Like, you're not gonna have to worry about your gill. Like, what you just gather everything there, you craft everything there, and make your own little paradise within FF14.
Yeah, I
I
feel
don't know. No more need to play the market board. Do some stonks there.
like it's pretty. I feel like it would be really fun for market board players and people that are like really into like more chill games like Animal Crossing and stuff. I'm quite hyped to see what it's gonna be like. What else? They're also adding a new housing district. So Ishgard is gonna add a housing district because back in Shadowbringers, like we said, the Ishgard restoration like phases happened. So it was a bunch of in community events where we were like rebuilding this broken part of Ishgard because of the war that happened back in Heavensward. So now they're inviting travelers to like buy houses there. So it's gonna be a whole new 20 plus ward housing district for people that are into the whole snowy and gray aesthetic. We also have new gold saucer minigames, so that's always fun, earning some points from minigames. Oh, also, if we haven't mentioned before, but FF14 actually has like a fully functional mahjong simulator. So if you're into playing mahjong with your friends, you can definitely
It also has this.
play mahjong.
I don't know what you would call it. Is it an RTS? Like, what's the name of that gold saucer game with the minions?
Oh, yeah. There's this. It's like a tactics game with your minions, but it's
Actually, let's not mention it because it doesn't have a lot of support. we don't have to mention the name because it doesn't have a lot of support and it's kind of dead and it's really dated.
yeah. I hope
But
they
it's,
do
it's
update
there.
it, though.
I guess it's there.
Yeah, I feel like I mostly spend time in the gold saucer with the lottery thing. I just go in
Yeah, I
there
mean,
once a week.
The gold saucer is basically. Do they have a gold saucer in every FF game?
No, it's an FF7 thing.
Okay, well, yeah, you have like this. It's basically a place to play mini games and earn a different kind of currency for cosmetics and mounts and whatnot. It's a fun little side gig to do. They also have Triple Triad in FF14, like a fully fledged card game where you can collect cards from running certain dungeons. It's not very fleshed out right now, still, but I think they're bringing changes to that as well, right?
Yeah, I feel like Triple Triad. If you really enjoyed that game in like that mini game in FF8, you'd enjoy it in 14 because it's collecting cards is pretty fun. It's still a random drop from a lot of the instances, but you can also like challenge NPCs and other players. So
Earn cards
it's kind of like
from NPCs.
Pokemon, I guess. You can challenge other players to play as well.
Speaking of things that are in other FFs, or in this case, not in other FFs, there's a new race coming to Endwalkers. For the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't played a lot, for the first time ever in Final Fantasy, we are going to see male Vieras.
Yes, this is the first time. So, I don't know if we actually... they didn't never promise this, that they were bringing in a new race. Because back in Shadowbringers, they already mentioned that Hrothgar and female Viera were going to be the last. But then suddenly...
Yeah, because it was already kind of difficult to implement some of the features of the Hrothgar and the female Viera, especially because the helmets.
yeah,
But
they're...
then, yeah, suddenly we were surprised to get, like, for the first time ever in any FF game, male Vieras.
Yeah, they were like super hyped back in the first reveal. Everyone was so excited to have bunny boys finally. They also soft promised like female Hrothgar, but they didn't say when. So that might be another next expansion, which is 2 years down the line. But that's kind of far. So
Or
yeah.
it could be like in a later patch with the Endwalkers. We're not sure.
Yep.
Although I kind of doubt that.
Hmm.
What do you think about the male Vieras? It's like they don't look. Looking at like the sexual dimorphism of like of Aura, we have like the really tall males and the really small females. I thought that they would pull something like that because of how tall the female Vieras. I thought the male Vieras would be a lot shorter. But
Yeah.
they're about average size,
They're a bit
skinny.
shorter than the females, which is fun. But
but not
Yeah.
the difference isn't quite as stark as in the Aura
Yeah.
race.
yeah. But the Aura one is like one male is like one like two
And a half.
yeah, 1.5 female Aura, so like that's kind of insane. I'm quite excited for male VR. I feel like a bunch of people are gonna change into them. They
That's
really like cover that whole Bishonen aesthetic. Cause like catboys are a bit too, how to say, they're not as
Rough
pretty.
around the edges.
Yeah, they're not as pretty. And Ellison are a bit too lanky. So I feel like the male Viera like capture that middle ground. What else? We're also getting new beast tribes, which are like I think they're like reputation in other games. So like daily thing you do like 3 quests for them every day, then earn some rep. And then there's also a bunch of locations that are new. I guess this isn't a spoiler anymore, but we are going to the moon because it's in the logo. So yeah.
Yep.
What else? As for the technical
on the
side,
technical side, yeah.
we're getting a new Oceania data center. So I feel kind of torn about this actually because I'm gonna miss my Australian friends who are gonna move. But yeah, so for people in Australia who wanna finally play without 100 ping, you guys are getting your own data center. We're also getting cross DC travel, but right now I think it's only between DCs. So for example, here in our data center in Elemental, we have 2 other Japanese servers with us, so we can finally visit them. So yeah, it's gonna be regional travel between DCs.
So yeah, overall, Endwalker has a lot to offer, and if you're just getting into the game now or you're considering starting the free trial, you should also know that the full version of the game, minus Endwalkers, so that's the base game all the way up to Shadowbringers, which is 3 expansions worth, plus the base game, is currently 50% off, at least 50, thereabouts. I don't know how to math. So something like 50% off on all the Square Enix stores that we checked.
That's the NA and the EU store. So yeah, grab a cup. No, actually, first play through the free trial and then make the most of it, and then buy
Yeah,
the.
get to level 60. Actually, technically speaking, like what some people do, right? If they really get into it, they level all of their classes to level 60. All the ones they have unlocked at the time. Because some of the classes are locked behind
Expansion.
the expansions. So you would be missing out on the Red Mage and the Samurai if you don't have Stormblood. But aside from those two, you're also missing out on the Gunbreaker and the... What else am I missing? Dancer from Shadowbringers. So aside from those 4 classes, you can level up the rest of them to 60 and then decide, oh, I'm going to buy the game now.
Yeah.
So you can pour like hundreds of hours into the game before you even purchase it from the free trial.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Please try the free trial of the critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy XIV.
So I think that's it. It's been almost an hour of Kal and I shilling for FF14. Just we love this game to bits. Like it's genuinely some of the most fun I've had probably ever. Like from all the games that I've been playing throughout my life ever since I was a kid. And I would suggest that you at least give it a shot. It's really worth it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's it for us today. This has been Delle.
This has been Kal. We hope to see you in Eorzea. So yeah, thank you for listening in.